Welcome to the Fiercely Visible CEO podcast. I'm your host, Steph Wharton. Join me as we dive into how to become a widely in-demand CEO that prioritizes balance between life and business, isn't afraid of making the scary decisions that get you results you actually care about, and unapologetically breaks the rules to build the business and life of your dreams. Today I'm going to be sharing something with you. It's somewhat of a struggle of mine that hopefully is going to give you permission, so to speak, to own your truth. And really, at the end of the day, to own your power above and beyond your truth. Because I do believe that the way that we all are uniquely with our flaws and our quirks is a really freaking beautiful thing. And we need to get more comfortable and more confident owning that and just showing up as the beautiful human beings that we really are, as corny as that might sound. So when I say struggle that I have, you could say it's a struggle. It's not really a struggle. It's just something that I happen to do. And I've been reworking those thoughts and those beliefs in my mind to readdress that from, let's say, a struggle to just a matter of fact, just something that I happen to do. You've probably heard me mention this before, actually, probably inside of the Fiercely Visible CEO podcast, because it's something that I happen to do a lot, apparently. And I didn't realize how often this would happen to me until I started recording myself in so many different ways, whether it was recording myself for a podcast or recording trainings to put together for a summit, or even guest trainings, doing them live, doing IGTV lives on Instagram. There's so many instances where I've either recorded myself and re-listened to it after, or in the moment, as I knew something was happening live or being recorded, I would catch myself doing this quote unquote mistake and be like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, oh my God, that's like so embarrassing. But it doesn't have to be embarrassing. Before I continue on, let me tell you what this actually is in case you haven't figured it out, because otherwise you're going to be like, Steph, get to the freaking point. What the hell are you talking about? So the thing that I do a lot is, we'll explain the different potential reasons why this might be happening, but it's that sometimes I use the wrong words. So I'll be stringing together a sentence and putting some thought that's going through my brain into words, and I mean to say one thing. However, I use a word that in some cases can have a very similar meaning, right? Like maybe it's a synonym, maybe in a different context it would mean the same thing, but in this context it doesn't. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying, the sentence that I've put together, it doesn't quite fully make sense. And you're just kind of like, oh, like you said that weird, or like that's not the word you should be using. Or in some instances, thankfully, this is not as common, I use a word that doesn't even mean the same thing. And I just got to roll with it and hope that everybody understands based on the context and the general story. And let's say if it's educational content, the entire presentation that I'm putting together, hopefully you'll be able to connect the dots. And let's be honest, people do connect the dots because none of us are perfect. We all use random words. I think that part of the reason why I tend to mix up some of my words is that sometimes I can go on such an intense tangent, or let's call it a riff, because although it might be a tangent, there's a whole point to it. And it really does help that tangent to reinforce my main point, the main thing that I'm trying to get across. So you get so passionate telling your story and going on about this one thing that your brain is thinking too fast or too slow for your words, one of those. So you're basically not going at the same pace. So now your mouth is trying to fill in the gaps because your brain is either way ahead of you or way behind you, and you just can't control it, can't keep up. So it just picks a word for you, right? Like, is this a thing? Like scientifically, could that have like a term? Like, can we diagnose me right now? Please let me know if this is a thing, or better yet, let me know this happens to you, where you fill in sentences with a word that is quite not the right word. So I think that's one of the reasons why. I probably just speak too quickly and my brain is already thinking of the next step. Similarly, actually, this also happens to me when I'm writing. I'll be writing together a sentence, and because my brain is already thinking of the next word, I'll misspell words while I'm writing it. So I'm always having to backtrack and re-edit my content, whatever it is that I wrote. But I digress. I think that's one of the reasons. Another reason could very well be because I also speak Spanish, right? I was born and raised in Argentina, proud Latina over here. So there are certain instances in which I may not even know the right word. So I can still use a similar word. Maybe it's not as punchy, or maybe I keep using the same crutch where if I'm trying to speak of something, I'll keep referring to the same way to explain it, the same word, because that's what comes naturally. That's when in the spot, like when you're on the hot seat just trying to talk about something, that's the way that your body and your brain just naturally goes back to this simple and basic way to explain things, because that's what's top of mind. And any different words don't come up fast enough, so you just roll with it, and that's okay. Like, I'd rather say it on the spot the way that it comes out. And this is where I think we're kind of circling back a little bit to owning your power, whether you relate to my quote unquote struggle, or whether you have something else that makes you a little bit different, a little bit quirky, a little bit feeling like you're on the struggle bus right now. That's okay, because that sets you apart. That's part of who you are. And what I was going to say is that I would much rather have those little blips and those little mistakes where what I'm saying is not 100% perfect, but it's still freaking powerful, because the passion and the meaning and the whole point of it, the message is still freaking there, as opposed to being a little bit less passionate, being a little bit more controlling and careful around what I'm trying to say. I would rather be imperfect than have a script in front of me. Don't get me wrong, little tangent here. There's nothing wrong with a script. I've used them before, especially if I'm doing something live or there's something that I really need to get the point across. So I'll have a couple bullet points in front of me. And as a skill, like when you're trying to practice and getting more comfortable with public speaking in particular, that's a great tool to have. Like, have cue cards. Who the hell cares? Like, even read out of a straight up script if you need to, like full on word for word. Not ideal, but that will get you practicing, and it will start feeling more and more comfortable and easy to do until you no longer need that script. So I don't want to hate on that, but I would rather just go off the cuff, no notes, no script, no nothing, and not worry about it sounding so perfect that by reading and not allowing your brain and your words and your story to go on these tangents, that it just ends up sounding so dry. Like, let's be honest. There's been a lot of times, I'll give you a specific example, where I've had bullet points and I'll stick to them, right? Like, I'll read everything and I'll get the point across, and it will still be powerful in some way, shape, or form, because my bullet points and my notes were brilliant. Like, it was exactly what I wanted to say, and it's exactly what people needed to hear. However, because you're so stuck and focused on following those points, on not missing anything and doing it in the right order so that it sounds even better, etc., you end up missing out on opportunities to go off on those tangents that all of a sudden you're now thinking of a different and cool story, and you're like, holy freaking shit, that was an even better way of explaining it, and it just feels so off the cuff, so real and so unique. Because a lot of the times what I experience is when I go on riffs, they tend to be things that you won't find in the online space. Nobody has, in theory, right? They could always be somebody else that says something similar, but at the end of the day, those riffs, they tend to be more unique. They tend to be stuff that comes up based on my own personal experience. So it's true thought leadership type of content, as opposed to you sticking to those bullet points and sharing the same dry, repurposed content that everybody else is spitting out in some way, shape, or form, even if it's slightly different. So going off the cuff, and yes, fine, allowing yourself to use the wrong word, like, who cares? I try and just like laugh it off if I notice. I'm like, you've heard me say this particular part before, where I'll just like laugh and be like, oh, ha ha ha, like, you know what I meant. Or I'll finally find the word and I'll replace it and be like, okay, no, this is what I was actually referring to. But either way, it works at the end of the day. But whether it's because English isn't exactly my first language, or whether it's because my brain is thinking much faster and my my body and my mouth is trying to catch up, regardless of the reason, that's a part of me. That's a part of my identity, right? And same way with like being a Latina, like there's things that I say slightly different. So who cares? Like I remember being on a call with a group of other Hispanics, and we were all just conversing in English and in Spanish because we both, as two different groups that wanted to either practice their Spanish or practice their English, we were both practicing. We were there to learn, to connect with other people in similar instances and from a similar background. So we were all there to just have fun and learn. The thing being is, I remember somebody telling a story about something that had happened, just a situation they'd been in where one person had no Spanish accent and the other person had a strong Spanish accent. And there was this conversation being had, simply diving into it without going too deep. Essentially, the gist of it was that one person really wanted to lose their accent, and so they did, in order to sound very professional and get the high paying jobs and all the things. And that's exactly the journey that they took. Whereas the other person wanted the thick accent because they wanted to remain audibly a very connected part of their community. They wanted to represent and to be able to be visibly Latinos, right? As opposed to blend in more easily. So while we're on that subject, I know this is not the entire point of this, but I feel like today's episode is a little bit loose because it's a little bit about owning your truth. It is about identity. It's about screw the rules and who cares about being perfect and being professional. Like those are so like such terms that I don't even know how to describe it, but like they really don't freaking matter. Like who cares about perfectionism? Who cares about professionalism? At the end of the day, if you're not being disrespectful to anybody and you're being ethical, etc., so you're quote unquote doing the right things from like human first standpoint, then who the hell cares what you look like? Who cares what you do, what you sound like, how you do things? Like you get to choose what you want to do and how you want to do it. So getting to that was the whole like identity thing. Like I'm not going to try and force myself to say things a certain way, even though I know most people, I'm going on so many tangents. I'm sorry. We're going to keep this way. When people first meet me, a couple of things can happen. On one hand, they'll just assume I'm Canadian, right? They're like, you're Caucasian, you're very freaking white, you speak English very well, whatever, you don't have an accent, so that's it. You were born, raised in Canada, cool. Or some other country, right? That is primarily white, English speaking, etc. However, there's other people that as soon as they meet me, within 5 seconds, they'll be like, holy shit, where the fuck are you from? And they tend to ask in a similar manner because they have no idea, they can't place the accent, but they notice that there is one and they feel that it's a very strong one at that. However, in my mind, I don't have one. I can hear it sometimes. Like when I say the word accent, maybe I hear it a little bit. When I say the number 3, I definitely hear it there. Like I roll my R's and I don't know why, but that's not going away. And I don't want it to go away because whether I'm using the right words or not, or whether I'm saying things in a way where similar to how other people say it or in a unique way, that's me. Those are my quirks. So I'm going to continue to show up in that way and say the wrong things and pronounce them in a funny/cute way. We're going to say that it's cute. And if you feel differently, that's your own problem, not mine, right? So by doing that, I'm going to allow myself to not overcomplicate every single thing that I do. I'm not going to overcomplicate my content. I'm not going to overcomplicate showing up. I'm not going to overcomplicate recording podcast episodes. I'm just going to flow with it. And sometimes that might mean that you hem and haw, or that you stutter, or that you backtrack, or that you go on tangents, or whatever other quote unquote problem you're having where it's not super smooth and perfect and you're not getting to the point yet. And who the hell cares? But with all that comes the passion, comes the cool freaking riff where you got the point across and you're like, holy shit, that was so freaking powerful. And now you have goosebumps. With that came your quirks and your personality that people are like, that's real, that's raw, that's more relatable. Maybe some other people can see themselves in you, right? Because they have similar, again, quote unquote struggles. I wish I had a better word for struggles because this is not a freaking struggle. For some of you, it might feel like it is. And I totally like relate with that, but it doesn't have to be. We don't have to to identify these random quirks and these random facts about us as struggles or problems. They're actually just a part of who you are. So it is up to you to get more comfortable with that and to rewrite those thoughts and those beliefs, like I was saying towards the beginning of this episode, into the fact that they are just a matter of fact. They are just a part of you. And that is freaking beautiful. And you get to own your power and show up as your true self and be confident in that and not overthink every single thing you're doing and try to be perfect and then lose that magic along the way. People are going to want to hire you because of that stuff. They're not going to hire you despite of it. It's going to be like, even if they're not thinking, oh, hey, I'm going to hire Steph because she pronounces or says things like funnily. Yeah, okay, fine. That's not going to be exactly what they're thinking. But that on a subconscious level is going to create this sense of, oh, they're real. Like our connection, our relationship, our friendship, every interaction we have is real because they're not faking it. They're not trying to be something that they're not, which means in turn, if you, when you create your content, you're not trying to be someone that you're not, I'm going to bet that the conversations you're having behind the scenes and the relationships you're starting to build within your community are also going to be real. They're not going to be pretend. And those relationships are so much more powerful, regardless of whether they're meant to turn into paying clients or they're just going to be connections that could turn into great friendships or just acquaintances. Who the hell cares? It doesn't matter what the end result is. That is so much more meaningful than just connecting with people on a surface level where you can't even get past a, hey, how's it going? Why'd you start your business? Like, how, I don't know, how was your weekend? Like, nothing wrong with those questions, technically, depending on the context, but let's be honest, they're surface level, and you could be having conversations about the most ridiculous shit. Like I have this one friend on social media. We connected not too long ago. I mean, by now it's been a second, but in the grand scheme of things, for as long as I've been in the online space, it hasn't been that long. And we have the wickedest conversations. Like not too long ago, we were talking about the fact that there needs to be more representation in the fashion industry because we'll go shopping. And I think the way that this came up is because lately I've been shopping a lot in the men's section because men's clothing is freaking wicked. It's even more affordable, which is such a ripoff. But they have cool shit like t-shirts, sweatpants, jackets, everything. And I'm like, why can't women's clothing be the same? Like, why can't we have more androgynous fashion? Like, I don't know a single store, at least not anywhere that I've lived or anywhere that I've heard of, where I can buy more neutral unisex clothing that's sexy as fuck in either in the more popular cultural traditional form of sexy or just sexy in general because everything gets to be sexy. Like how many times you see a man, if you are into men, and you go, damn, that outfit is sexy as fuck, right? Why can't a woman just wear that? Like that would be so freaking gorgeous. Anyway, so we were talking about that, and then we started talking about like queer friendly, like pride related baby clothes, and we're like, see, that would be epic, but you barely find that other than around Pride Month. So anyway, like those were freaking epic and like really powerful conversations that we're having, and we're joking around about starting a new business and like going into opening stores that do have more unisex androgynous clothing or baby clothes that are pride related or just queer friendly, etc. And I don't know, that was just so much more real, like so much more meaningful that I'm even mentioning it here right now, right? Like that's how memorable it is in my mind. And those are the conversations that we have because we're not trying to be anybody. Like we're not even trying to get each other as clients. Like we're literally just connecting as two human beings. And when you connect with people like that, like I said earlier, they could just be friends. They could become clients. You could want to invest in them. Like there's just so much potential, including friendship as potential, that it makes it worth it. And it's also so much more worth it for you because when you do own your power, when you show up as yourself, everything becomes a little bit easier because you're no longer trying to force this facade, this allure of perfection. Would allure be the right word? I don't know. Perfect example of me not being able to find the right words. So trying to chase this idea of perfection that it makes it so much harder to show up because you're trying and you're second guessing everything, and essentially you're just overthinking. And when you overthink anything, it becomes this bigger task, as opposed to literally, if we're talking about like creating content on stories, you literally just open up the app, you go to stories, you hit record, you say your piece, and then you exit. You caption it, hopefully, so that everybody can actually read it, because one, not everybody can hear. Two, not everybody has headphones. Three, not everybody cares to listen, but they still want to consume your content and read it. So go ahead and caption your shit, right? Make it more accessible for everybody. But you get to just do that and walk away, as opposed to sitting there for half an hour and be like, okay, how can I say this perfectly? Who cares? Stop caring about perfection. What I will say is that, oh, I thought my recording was going to end. That's hilarious. The message changed. It says you're recording right now 20 minutes. And I thought it was going to like cancel me out. And I'm like, no, I'm not done. Oh man, I hope you're still with me. I'm going to wrap this up in like 5 seconds. So if I even remember what I was going to say, right? Anyway, I probably lost my train of thought. I just want you to start becoming more aware as to where you're trying to force things and what you can do in order to stop forcing it. Like, what are your quirks and what are you like in real life? How do you talk to your friends and your family and your loved ones? Like, what naturally comes out of you, whether it's energy, words, tone of voice, what you look like just any of those things that are just naturally a part of you, and figure out how you can slowly start weaving them in more and more and more into your content. I just remembered what I was going to say. So, no, I forgot. We're going to leave it at that. This is probably the weirdest episode I've ever recorded. So thank you so much for everybody that is still here with me. I freaking love you so, so much. But go ahead, own your power, and let me know if you can relate, or if you have a weird quirk like I do, even if it has nothing to do with like mixing up your words or not being able to think of the right words. And let's bond together over that, because we're all freaking amazing and more people need to see that. That's it for this week's episode of the Fiercely Visible CEO podcast. Be sure to sign up to our email list at stephwharton.com and subscribe in your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss our next episode.